This regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development Committee of the Metropolitan Council. I'm Robert Lilligren, the chair, joined by a quorum of the committee. Welcome. Committee members, we have an agenda before us. If there's no changes, we'll just consider it approved. Next on the agenda is approval of the December 18th, 2023 Community Development Committee minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, additions, corrections? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. They are two parks-related actions. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Great. Discussion, hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. And before we move into our non-consent business items, and I don't think this is going to be a problem today, but we do need to clear the council chambers by 5:45 to make way for the next meeting. The Equity Advisory Committee is meeting here and in here. Yep, and they'll need time to reset the media and things. So we're moving pretty quickly through our agenda. So let's move on to our first non-consent business item. It's item 2024-8. It's the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park Long Range Plan Amendment and Cedar Lake Regional Trail Long Range Plan Amendment. Mr. Kelly's here to present, but I was going to turn it over to Councilmember Bento, who represents us on MPOS, for a few opening comments, please. Councilmember Bento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to start by noting, and you'll know this from the information that was provided prior to today's meeting, but there wasn't a quorum present at the January 4th meeting of the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, but there was uniform support for this going forward. So the members of the commission wanted me to share that with you. We had a new commission member who's new to the group who is getting married, and that's a good excuse for being absent, and I guess. And then there was a commission member who was sick, and I was actually out sick that day as well, but I was watching online and I had an opportunity to hear the discussion. They had a great discussion, and I want to note, well, I'll save my remarks for later, but I just wanted to start with that those present did a great job in terms of digging into the issues, asking good questions, and getting good information. I'll say more later.
Great, thank you for representing us, and thanks for that report. So moving on to the report on the item, Colin Kelly. Mr. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and council members. I am Colin Kelly, planning analyst, and I'm here to present the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park and Cedar Lake Regional Trail Long Range Plan Amendments, also known as the Cedar Isles Plan, on behalf of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, or MPRB. I should note that Emma Pachuta, senior planner with MPRB, is here today and may respond to questions following this presentation if needed. Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park and Cedar Lake Regional Trail are centrally located in the regional park system in southwest Minneapolis. The plan amendments focus on the park spaces surrounding Cedar Lake, Lake of the Isles, and Dean Parkway, and a segment of the Cedar Lake Regional Trail. The figures here are figures 1, 2, and 3 in the staff report. MPRB outlines several target audiences who have been historically underrepresented in planning processes to engage during the Cedar Isles planning process, including cultural communities, seniors and elders, people with disabilities, renters, youth, and people who do not currently visit the Cedar Isles area. The plan acknowledges that Indigenous community members face barriers to access, and that a legacy of redlining and racial covenants have shaped access to the area. An Indigenous acknowledgement appears at the very beginning of the plan. Project staff sought paid services from institutions, nonprofits, and cultural organizations to design and implement engagement with specific audiences. Several themes emerged from these community collaborator engagements, including a desire for greater accessibility for people of all abilities and races, acknowledgement that there is a lack of diversity in the area, interest in elevating Indigenous legacy through education and interpretation, concerns about safety, specifically for people of color, and support for additional art and culture. The plan was transparent with whom MPRB was able to engage and who they had a harder time reaching. Because neighboring residents engaged strongly throughout the process, for example, it was often difficult for staff to adequately incorporate and support ideas from underrepresented voices in meetings, such as people of color or people who lived outside the adjacent communities. Following adoption of the plan, further community engagement will be completed as funds become available and projects are implemented. It will be important for outreach to continue to include a local and regional audience to ensure a diversity of perspectives. Community engagement for the Cedar Isles Plan began in late 2019 and continued through the public comment period in early 2023. Throughout the process, MPRB aimed to engage as many stakeholder groups as possible to ensure the plan reflected a diversity of voices. The project team worked directly with stakeholders to ensure their perspectives were consistently understood, considered, and reflected in project decisions. Some of the public engagement themes from different phases of the planning process included support for elevating water quality within the plan, appreciation for the existing walking and biking network, appreciation for existing programming and amenities, interest in improving safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, support for and opposition to formalization of ad hoc forest trails near Cedar Lake, suggestion for a permanent restroom, and support for the preferred park concept. Partner engagement included both a Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, and a Project Advisory Committee, or PAC. The TAC was made up of staff from different agencies and organizations that have a connection to the project area. The PAC was made up of MPRB staff representatives from different departments across the organization. The plan for Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles was approved by the MPRB Board of Commissioners on July 5th, 2023. The resolution adopting the plan is attachment 1 of the staff report. Community members continue to provide comments on elements of the plan. Prior to the January 4th Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission meeting, council staff and commissioners received a message focused on the southeast shore of Cedar Lake. These topics were the focus of a lengthy discussion by the commissioners present. A summary of the discussion appears on the first 2 pages of the staff report. During the planning process, 2 parcels of land were identified as future acquisition sites. A privately owned vacant .27 acre lot adjacent to the Kenilworth Channel and a 33.85 acre property known as the Remnant Lands located to the northeast of Cedar Lake. The map on the right is figure 4 in the staff report. If acquired, the .27 acre parcel would complete a public pedestrian connection from Burnham Road Bridge to Cedar Lake along the north side of the channel. The plan proposes formalizing this public connection. The 33.85 acre parcel is currently an unmanaged forest area with minimal ad hoc trails and is owned by the Metropolitan Council. It was identified as a parcel for MPRB to acquire during the Metro Green Line extension planning process. The Cedar Isles plan formalizes this by proposing to acquire the parcel, maintaining most of the land as a natural area. Formal assessments have not been completed for either parcel, and there is not currently a timeline for acquisition of either parcel. Goals and recommendations in the Cedar Isles plan are divided into the following topics: water quality, natural resources, access and circulation, accessibility, safety, historic and cultural resources, and program and amenities. Here, I'll focus on 2 of those areas: access and circulation, and amenities and programming, and the elements most often discussed in the context of the development concept. Some of the access and circulation recommendations include formalizing ad hoc soft surface walking paths through the forest on the north, northeast, and east side of Cedar Lake, a new pedestrian trail along the Kenilworth Channel, widening walking and biking trails adjacent to the Cedar Lake Parkway, widening trails along Dean Parkway to improve safety, and designing trails at an elevation above seasonal flood levels. Some of the amenities and programming recommendations include new docks, formalized water access points, viewing spots, picnic areas, and enhanced signage for Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles. The plan also proposes a change from a portable to a permanent restroom at Cedar Lake East Beach and proposes to expand the number of restrooms near existing and proposed amenities at Lake of the Isles. In addition, the plan adds a few enhanced welcome entry points for Cedar Lake Regional Trail and Dean Parkway. Natural resources and water quality are an important focus of the Cedar Isles Plan. From a natural resource perspective, the plan proposes enhancing natural areas and improving tree canopy in large swaths of existing forested areas. The plan also identifies areas where the existing prairie could be enhanced, for example, along South Upton Avenue and a large swath of the Cedar Lake Regional Trail. Around Lake of the Isles, several lawn areas shift to other uses, including rain gardens and prairie and pollinator plantings to address water quality, flooding, and pollinator connectivity. Some of the park plan level goals for water quality include addressing stormwater runoff, reducing chloride, trash, sediment, and other pollutants, and maintaining and stabilizing shoreline with native vegetation. The total estimated cost to implement the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park and Cedar Lake Regional Trail long-range plan amendments is approximately $40 million to $58 million. Most of the estimated costs are for water quality and natural resource improvements. Estimated costs are shown in Table 1 of the staff report. Of this total estimated cost, an estimated $2.3 million to $2.6 million is specific to the Cedar Lake Regional Trail Corridor. Attachment 2 of the staff report highlights the items that are specific to this regional trail. The estimated acquisition cost of $625,000 is the estimated market value for the 0.27 acre parcel of vacant residential land. The Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park and Cedar Lake Regional Trail long-range plan amendments are consistent with the requirements of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, including Chapter 5, Strategy 1, and other council policies. The proposed action before you then is that the Metropolitan Council approve the Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park Long-Range Plan Amendment, approve the Cedar Lake Regional Trail Long-Range Plan Amendment, require Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager prior to initiating any construction, and to advise Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to consider implementing the recommendations for solar resources and transportation in the advisory comments section of the business item. And with that, I will stand for your questions and comments and remind you MPRB staff is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and Ms. Pachuta, thanks for being here and for your work on this for sure. Questions or comments on the report? Councilmember Vento.
I just wanted to know that the commissioners who were present at the meeting on January 4th had a really robust discussion with Colin and the park staff, and in particularly, they really zeroed in on an issue that was raised by a community member regarding encroachment and public access issues, and really got some good explanations. There's concern about encroachment in the southeast shore area of Cedar Lake, but there was a great discussion, and the commission felt really reassured by the PPRB's policy commitment to re-engage the community before it implements any future capital investments. So the commission members who were present fully support this and would ask for our committee's support as well. With that, I'll just let folks ask questions and let the staff.
Thank you for that report, Councilmember Vento. We appreciate the quality of your representation on the impasse. Further discussion, questions? Yeah, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report on the discussions that have happened, the suggestions that were presented in the process of getting to approval by the Minneapolis Parks and Rec Board, and in the process of our impasse as well. I was looking at what seems to me to be a fantastic long-range plan that focuses on the improvement of natural resource areas, the improvement of our park areas and trails, and just really making this a much, much more available, accessible, beautiful, environmentally suited amenity for all of us, and I appreciate that. I also heard, and it stuck with me, how difficult it has been to ensure that the very voices sought after as a part of this plan are represented. And I hear the word collaborator, and the organizations that were collaborators seem to be leaning in very heavily to try and represent what they have heard. I think I got stuck reflecting on that and just wondering, so what do we do that I neglected to hear carefully the next steps as we're moving forward, and I will be supporting this plan as well. How? Because we know that this will continue to be difficult in the process of evolving the plan and before any physical changes are made. How do we make sure, what are we doing to make certain that we're mitigating for that difficulty and ensuring to the greatest extent possible? And maybe you'll tell me that's already been done, but I just want to hear, what is that effort, not only ongoing here, but that we will engage in as we work with communities to understand how those very difficult voices to hear and very difficult voices to represent are being heard and represented.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Carter, excellent questions, and thank you for the comments as well. I could start with saying a little bit about the Regional Park Policy Plan's equity analysis requirement, which is one that requires our implementing agencies to carefully consider those living within the vicinity of any given park or trail project and beyond, sort of the travel shed, if you will, of any given location, and has some pretty specific questions about how they've been engaged, how the plan has been modified as a result of that engagement, as well as a commitment to accountability, to how individuals will continue to be engaged over time, even beyond sort of the adoption of a plan. And so agencies like Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board are doing that with this plan as well. And they have built into their community engagement policy a commitment to continuing to engage communities even beyond the adoption of the plan by their board, by the Metropolitan Council. So prior to any capital improvements, they'll continue to engage with folks both in the local area as well as what they deem in a regional area outside of the immediate vicinity as well. So that's partly how they responded in the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission meeting, and I relay those sentiments here, along with a little bit more about our equity analysis requirement.
That analysis stays alive to the extent that it continues to observe how that engagement actually then changes any aspects of the project prior to the physical developments that will occur. Is that correct?
That is correct, indeed.
I thank you, and thank you for helping me just to spend a little more time in that space, because, it is difficult, of course, to hear. It's difficult to hear, and I always want to just push the button on that one and make sure to get a better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And further questions or discussion on the report? Oh, Councilmember Wolf, then Councilmember Bento. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you elaborate on the concerns about safety that they got from the public engagement?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Wolf, I would like to, if appropriate, invite Emma Pachuta to the table.
Please, Ms. Petruta, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Good evening, council members. I think if I heard the question correctly, it was about elaborating on what we heard around the issue of safety during engagement. So there were, I think, 2 layers of sort of issues around safety that we heard. One was safety in our natural areas, so folks who were maybe walking through the forest, making sure that they felt safe, whether it was because there was no light or trying to think about how to frame this. Just kind of like safety walking through these spaces alone. So lighting was suggested, things like wayfinding was suggested, formalizing trails so that they weren't just kind of ad hoc trails that you had to figure out yourself. You sort of knew before you entered the forest how long of a trail you were going to be walking on and sort of where it ended. So we did kind of try to think through a lot of those issues around safety. The second tier of safety that we heard was around people maybe profiling other community members. There was this idea that right now the park police help to enforce safety at East Cedar Lake Beach, and for some folks that made them feel safer, other folks that made them feel less safe. And so we talked through that issue, and it is noted in the plan. The plan didn't make any formal recommendations around how to address that because that was a little bit outside of the purview of what the plan could address.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Councilmember
a
Wolf.
follow-up, please?
Yeah, please.
Is the park board in general working on that issue outside of this plan, if that's being expressed by people?
I mean, generally speaking, I would say that the park board is often taking feedback around those types of issues and thinking about how they can improve, I think, community relations in our public safety division, and that sort of falls within sort of that division more than it does within the planning division. So yes, but I can't speak to exactly how and what that looks
you.
like.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, Councilmember Bento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that one of our commission members, Tess Buska, is an active user of this park trail and spoke very, very positively about this proposal. And it was great to have a commission member who really personally knows what this project is all about. So that was very reassuring during our discussion. And I say during our discussion in kind of a royal sort of way because I was watching virtually from home and coughing in between.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on the report, Councilmember Wolf.
I would just comment, Mr. Chair, that I did a lot of swimming there as a child, so I have a more than 50-year relationship with that particular lake as well.
Great.
Thank you for sharing. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Kelly has proposed that we approve the Chain of Lakes Regional Park Long Range Plan Amendment, approve the Cedar Lake Regional Trail Long Range Plan Amendment, require Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services Interceptor Engineering Assistant Manager prior to initiating any construction, and also to advise the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board to consider implementing the recommendations for solar resources and transportation in the advisory comments section of the business item. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Congratulations. We'll move on to our next non-consent business item. That is the City of Empire's 2040 Comprehensive Plan and 2040 Comprehensive Sewer Plan. It's 2024-12, and this is in both the Community Development Committee and the Environment Committee. And Mr. Boylan is here to present. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Again, I'm Patrick Boylan, working local planning assistance. I'm sector representative in District 16, which we are. Just a really quick note, kind of context before you today is the comprehensive plan amendment for the city of Empire. Empire Township, the council reviewed and authorized the township to put their plan into effect 4 years ago. And since then, Empire Township has incorporated and organized into a city. So the conclusion of reviewing is that plan no longer had any force, and they needed to adopt an update for the city. So that's what we're seeing here today.
Thank you for that background.
Figure 1, the staff report is in front of you on the screen. Potentially, or prominently featured is the Vermilion Highlands Wildlife Management Area, which is the lighter green area, and 2 regional trails and 1 search corridor. The darker green features the Whitetail Village Regional Park, which is an absolutely spectacular place. It's a wonderful place that was set aside for perpetuity. The winter hiking and cross-country skiing trails are phenomenal. Maybe not so much this year for skiing because of lack of snow, but the hiking there is still good. The city is also home to Empire Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is the small blue, kind of sort of in the center of the image. And that is, it opened up in 1979, serves about 150,000 people, and has a capacity of 24 million gallons of wastewater per day. Community designations map is figure 2 in the staff report, and the city is identified as emerging suburban edge. There's also an agricultural community, which is the darker green, and the majority of this is that the city is under cultivation, active cultivation. Empire is located in central Dakota County and surrounded by the communities of Rosemount, Coates, Vermilion Township, Hampton Township, Castle Rock Township, Farmington, Lakeville, and Napa Valley. The official forecasts are before you from Table 1. It shows between 2020 and 2040, the city will grow by 1,660 people and that represents 700 households and there'll be an increase of 220 jobs rather in that time frame as well. Emerging suburban edge communities are, for this particular city, expected to grow between 3.5 and 8.0 units per acre, which meets the Thrive regional policy designation of emerging suburban edge, which is of 3 to 5 units per acre. Figure 3 is shown here of the staff report and includes 642 acres of single-family detached homes, 17.6 acres of attached and multifamily uses, 12 acres of commercial retail, and over 157 acres of industrial. There are 865 acres of extractive uses, very common in this part of Dakota County for the abundant gravel and sand that's nearby. And there are more than 4,500 acres of park recreational land, including the Whitetail Woods I mentioned a moment ago, and there's about 12,000 acres of land under cultivation at this point. This map shows the 2040 future land use. It's dominated by the over 1,000 acres of agriculture uses, which is about 55% of the total area. Commercial industrial make up 101 acres or less than 1% of the total area, and residential uses comprise a little over 5.3% of the planned residential uses. Council staff report, the reflection there is that the plan conforms with the regional system plans and is consistent with council policies and is compatible with the plans of adjacent affected jurisdictions. The proposed action before you today is that to authorize the City of Empire to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for water supply. The meeting schedule is after commencement of this meeting. The Environment Committee will meet next week on the 24th, and then midway through February, the full council will entertain this thing. Before I take questions, just wanted to kind of point this out. This is actually a spectacular place in Dakota County. If you look up online, it'll say Hampton Township, which is not true. Google Maps is usually right. It's not right now. This is actually in the city of Empire. This is called the Wat Muni Satorum, and it is the largest Cambodian temple in North America. I've never been this close. This is actually from their website, or actually their Facebook page, this particular photo. But from the road, it is absolutely stunning. The Monasatorum means a place where the sage or layperson come to practice. And there's a pagoda, a shrine, and a stupa, which is a place of meditation, are all part of the complex. That's all I have. Any questions you have?
Thank you, Mr. Boylan. Thanks for sharing that last bit as well. I've seen this from the road, never up this close either, and it's really stunning. Discussion on the report, questions? Councilmember Lindstrom.
Empire's got a lot going for it, clearly with that beautiful building and Whitetail Woods and Vermilion Highlands is in that general neck of the woods as well. Not really a question about Empire, except that, so they're one of the newest cities, if not the newest from last year, I think.
At least in the metro, the newest city.
In the metro, yeah. And Credit River before that, maybe a year or two before that. I'm just kind of curious, what other townships that you know of, maybe Lisa, that you know of, are on the horizon in the metro area for becoming cities?
Chair Lilligren and Councilmember Lindstrom, none that really come to mind for me. I mean, the city of Empire, unlike most townships, has been urbanized for decades. And, not very big, certainly, but with a wastewater treatment plant and regional sanitary sewer in their own local water supply, effectively been operating, not, under legal contracts with the state of Minnesota, but effectively operating like a small city for years. I don't know if Director Barajas has any insights into cities coming up in the metro that might be doing that.
Director Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council members, as Patrick alluded to, most of the cities that have, or townships that have become cities recently are places that already have had urban development for various reasons, and or are right on the horizon of having that within our long-term sewer service area, like Credit River. I don't have others that are coming to the top of mind. Those were definitely the two because we get kind of long roads to this. It takes a number of years to incorporate. So usually city staff or township staff are consulting with us pretty early in the process about the steps, and we have those. But I think these were the only two that I had on my radar too.
Very good, thank you.
Good question. Further discussion on the report? Seeing none, Mr. Boylan proposes that we authorize the city of Empire to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, and that we advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for water supply. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. It's a city in your district. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Did you want to say something? Oh, I'm sorry. You psyched me out. The next item is it's scheduling a public hearing. It's item 2024-25. It's the City of North Oaks Red Forest Way South Comprehensive Plan Amendment overview. And so this is just scheduling the public hearing. And do we have a presentation on? Oh, okay. All right, great. Mr. Wojcik, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lilligren and committee members. I'm Angela Torres, the Senior Manager of Local Planning Assistance. I'm here with Eric Wojcik. He's the Planning Analyst and Sector Representative for District 10, which includes the City of North Oaks, and he works with Councilmember Lindstrom in this district, sorry. We're here to
You're not
today,
the first person to say.
Agree.
Or the last.
Or the last.
We're here today to talk about a specific comprehensive plan amendment, Red Forest Way South, but also a plan modification process that will likely be very new for many of you. I'll share a bit about the process, and then Eric will talk, we'll talk about the specifics of the amendment that is proposed. The council's role in comprehensive planning is outlined in the Metropolitan Land Planning Act. Per statute, the council reviews and comments on the comprehensive plans of local government units to determine their compatibility with each other and conformity with metropolitan system plans. The council shall review and comment on the apparent consistency of the comprehensive plans with the adopted plans of the council. The council doesn't have approval or denial authority over comprehensive plans. Rather, we review and comment, as I mentioned, authorize that plan for local adoption, or we require a plan modification as we're talking about today. Council staff generally works with local governments quite a bit. It's like our daily part of our conversations is talking to local governments every day. And we work with local governments to ensure that their plans and amendments can conform to the council's plans and are consistent with council policies. We also provide tools like the local planning handbook, individual technical assistance like sector representatives. We conduct workshops and training events as comprehensive plans are being developed, and provide many other tools and resources to help local governments reach these requirements, and the vast majority do. On the rare occasions that a plan does not conform to regional plans, there's a process outlined in statute called plan modification. Just to emphasize how rare this is, we haven't done a plan modification in the 10 years that I've been at the council. More often than not, we're able to resolve the issues well before it reaches the committees here for review. So before we get to this point, a lot of conversations have already happened, and we've worked very diligently with communities. However, the council may require a local government to modify its comprehensive plan that doesn't conform to a metropolitan system plan if the council concludes that the local plan or plan amendment is more likely than not to have either a substantial impact on or to represent a substantial departure from the council's adopted policy plans. That's language directly from statute, as I don't normally speak in those terms, which you may recognize, but it is very specific, and the determination is also very specific. So our system plans for transportation, wastewater, regional park, all define individually what it means to conform to the regional system plan and what constitutes a substantial impact or departure from that plan. In this case, the system that we're talking about is the regional wastewater system. The council's process is also kind of outlined in statute. The council must set and hold a public hearing, adopt findings, and adopt a resolution. Should the council approve the proposed actions in this business item, the proposed schedule for considering the city's comprehensive plan amendment is shown here. The public hearing would be held on February 5th. The public hearing is then held open for 5 days, closing on February 12th. Because we don't typically close public hearings over the weekend. So keeping that open then until the 12th on the Monday. The CDC would review this again at the February 20th meeting with the public hearing record, findings, and the staff report, make a recommendation to the council, and the council would take final action on February 28th. The public hearing itself, which we're asking to be set today, will include a brief overview of the issues and provide an opportunity for the city and other interested parties to present comments. The overview will review the process described in the Metropolitan Land Planning Act and the issues representing a substantial departure from the regional wastewater system plan. I'll just pause here to answer any questions on the process before Eric describes the specific issues at hand with the North Oaks Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Alternatively, if the issues within the amendment itself would be helpful to understand first, we can hold questions till the end. I'll leave that to you.
I'll just pause here. Committee members, any questions on the process that Ms. Torres laid out for us?
Looking for the issues.
Okay, cool.
A quick
Oh,
question.
Councilmember Lindstrom.
Just curious, they have a chance to comment on it. You mentioned, do they have a chance to present on it or just put forward a written comments?
Ms. Torres.
Chair and committee member Lindstrom. The chair will establish the public hearing process. Typically, the community is asked to, they can present whatever information that they're wanting to, but generally it is up to the chair, I believe. Lisa can Executive Director Barajas can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we do have some discretion there. But we have already spoken with the city, and they're listening in today. Didn't have an opportunity to speak at today's meeting, but at the public hearing, they'll definitely be here and definitely look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. And Director Barajas informed me of that before the meeting started. So consistent with what Ms. Torres just said. They will be here for the public hearing to present. And Director Barajas, did you have anything to add?
I would just add, Mr. Chair, council members, that because I can't recall the last time we held a public meeting, it was before even my time at the council, 16 years ago, and our policies have updated since then around this, but it would be, looking at past practice, typical to allow for that presentation from the city to make their own case.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Any further questions on the process? Hearing none, Mr. Wycheck.
Great, and thanks, Angela. I will proceed with presenting on the Red Forest Way South Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Some of the information that I'll be presenting will be familiar to you because it is a comprehensive plan amendment. So you'll have seen images like this, which is also in your report, which is highlighting the regional systems in relation to the amendment site. You can see the amendment site there in red in the east portion of the city. There's not a lot of regional systems within the city of North Oaks. There are interceptor pipes that kind of run along the southeastern edge and then also on the west side of the city. And we'll show you when we go into the community designation portion that there are parts of the city that are sewered. There are no regional parks within the city. The nearest regional parks would be the Snail Lake Vadnais Regional Park, which is just to the south in Vadnais Heights. Now, the background of the city is quite unique compared to other cities within the region. Nearly all of the land within the city, with few exceptions, is governed by the North Oaks Homeowners Association. Perpetual covenants are part of all deeds and declarations since 1950, except for only a few properties. Some neighborhoods include sub-associations that have more restrictive provisions, but they remain subordinate to that overall North Oaks Homeowners Association. All roads within the city are private, and local utilities are the responsibility of the HOAs. And since 1999, the primary governing planning and regulatory document for the city has been the East Oaks Planned Unit Development. So a little bit unique when compared to other communities within our region. The amendment details themselves. The amendment proposes to expand the Metropolitan Urban Service Area to include properties in the Red Forest Way South development. This would be 23 parcels with 24 sewer connections across 72.2 net acres. The amendment states the purpose is to connect these parcels to the regional sanitary sewer, and then it would require a change from the rural residential community designation to the emerging suburban edge community designation, which is a sewered community designation. This would reduce the city's community-wide planned density from 3 units per acre to 2.3 units per acre. The proposed net density for this particular development connecting the 23 parcels would be 0.32 units per acre, so that would be below that 3 required. Here you can see you might have a better understanding here of the community designation breakup of the city. You've got 2 community designations. One is an unsewered community designation of rural residential, which is really governing most of the city itself, the central area of the city. And then you have the surrounding areas along the border that are in that emerging suburban edge community designation connected with sanitary sewer. And all of the properties within the rural residential are on septic systems. And this gives you a better idea of where that MUSA extension would occur in the hatched area, again, corresponding to the amendment site in the east portion of the city. This is the portion of the city that's being proposed to be part of the MUSA and also the community designation change to emerging suburban edge. And this map also depicts all of the septic systems within the city. So when it comes to minimum requirements related to community designation and density, we have the rural residential designation does not allow for the provision of regional sewer services. So in order to extend that sewer service, there must be a community designation change from that rural residential to emerging suburban edge in this case. The emerging suburban edge communities are required to plan at minimum densities of between 3 and 5 units per acre. And the inconsistency with the emerging suburban edge minimum density requirements preclude the community designation change. Our wastewater staff have analyzed this as well in relation to the Council's adopted 2040 Water Resources Policy Plan. Water Resources Policy defines a substantial departure from the regional wastewater system as when communities plan for sewer development densities that are lower than council density standards that are the basis for regional infrastructure planning purposes. The system plan for regional wastewater services does not include or foresee an extension of regional sewer services to this area within the planning horizon or beyond. And then the final point being that the reduction in the city's community-wide plan density from 3 units per acre to 2.3 is inconsistent with regional land use policy, including the required minimum density for the Seward community designation of emerging suburban edge. There are no changes in this amendment to create residential land uses with high enough density to support the development of affordable housing at scale. Therefore, the amendment does not inhibit North Oaks from implementing their housing element, but neither does it make any progress in ameliorating the policy inconsistency that currently exists, since it does not guide sufficient land to address their share of the region's affordable housing need for 2021 to 2030. As Angela stated, we've been in communication with the city for many months. I believe our first communications on this amendment were in April of 2023, so we've had many meetings with the city. The options that we've highlighted along the way are the following, and these aren't necessarily limited, but these are the main options. The city is welcome to develop as authorized with its current 2040 comprehensive plan, developing 23 lots on subsurface sewage treatment systems, or SSTS, within the current rural residential community designation. Alternatively, the city could identify areas within the Seward portions of the city to increase plan densities to retain the overall minimum of 3 units per acre required density for new development and redevelopment areas. And then finally, the city could revise the amendment to propose densities consistent with sewer densities within the emerging suburban edge community designation at that minimum of between 3 and 5 units per acre. And Angela had shown this slide earlier, but I just wanted to show it again, so because it's related to today's action. The council are really requesting that the council schedule a public hearing to consider the issue of plan modification on the proposed amendment. And as a reminder, the council, should the council approve the proposed actions in the business item, the proposed schedule for considering the city's comprehensive plan amendment is shown here. The public hearing will include a brief overview of the following issues and an opportunity for the city and other interested parties to present comments. Now to today's proposed action, that the Metropolitan Council establish a date to conduct a public hearing to discuss and receive comment on a proposed plan modification for the City of North Oaks Red Forest Way South Comprehensive Plan Amendment. The hearing will take place at the Community Development Committee meeting on Monday, February 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. And happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wycheck. Questions on that report? Discussion? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for this information and explaining, the unique situation that we're in. It's good to be able to kind of refresh our process and take it through its entire option. There's a lot to be learned from that, and I think that we'll be very informed from this information at the next public meeting and hearing the presentation, hopefully from the city, so that we'll be able to weigh in more. Looking at the approaches that you've presented, it looks like there are several options for the city to consider that would get them into conformance. So I'm looking forward to hearing more back from the city and what their considerations are.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion? Councilmember Carter, then Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you. I really love the way Councilmember Chambliss put it. It is a great opportunity for learning, and I look forward to learning more. The question that sticks in my head, and as you have said, this is the first time that we have moved toward a public hearing. It is not the first time that we've asked a jurisdiction to consider amending or a modification to its plan, but that those considerations have not yet been taken up. That's what I'm hearing. The suggestions that have been made or the alternate routes have not been considered amenable to the city's plan. And so we're going to be hearing from them, and it seems very clear what we're asking, as we're asking for a minimum density before a designation change. So I'm not really sure what we're going to be hearing. But what I would ask is, are there precedents? Because I'm not hearing in that you said this is the first time that a public hearing has been held. I am not hearing whether or not there have been exception processes when or if a city has decided not to take up other options. Have there been, in the time that anyone has been here, exceptions made? And can you share with me if that is the case? Perhaps you don't have that information, or send to us, what those exception processes may have taken into account. So I'd like an answer perhaps today to whether there have been exceptions and more information should that be the case.
Ms. Torres?
Chair Lilligren and Committee Member Carter, the process for requiring, if the council and the committee and the city or the community are unable to come to an agreement, there isn't a process for exception. The process is outlined in statute as a plan modification if the city continues to move forward with a proposal that is not in conformance with the council's plans, adopted plans. And so there isn't a process for exception. What happens most of the time, as I mentioned, before it gets to this point, we have met with the community over and over again, worked things out, come to an understanding, something that is acceptable both to the council, meaning that it is consistent in conformance and compatible with plans of other jurisdictions. In this case, we're not able to come to that middle ground because the proposal is simply not in conformance with the council's plans. And it's a very clear example of conformance. And so there isn't an exception process. The process that we have is defined in statute, and it is the modification. We are, yes.
Okay.
If we are unable to come to agreement, the next step is a plan modification.
Thank you. And Councilmember Carter, Director Barajas wanted to add more to that response.
Totally agree with Angela. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would offer that the council has initiated the plan modification process a couple of times over this last 16 years, but it has always ended in a resolution before the council has taken official action on that particular community's plan, where we've been able to resolve and they say, okay, don't pass a resolution, we'll do it. We'll do this part or do something along those lines. Prior, we were going back even further and trying to look at what else had happened in the past. And the last plan modification that went the full, all the way through with the council passing a resolution that we could find in our records was the case of Lake Elmo, which ultimately was litigated through the Minnesota Supreme Court as well. So that was back in the early 2000s. So it has been quite some time since we've had to take anything all the way through, and it's still in the process that Angela and Eric outlined on the slides. At any point up until the council adopts a resolution with those findings, the city could still ask to pull out and resolve those issues. There's multiple avenues for turn-offs for resolution.
Councilmember
Thank
Carter.
you. And so I had to ask that question just because it seems so clear. And yet we're almost at that point that I wondered if there were an expectation that something different could happen. And if there were something different, I'd want to know what it is. It seems as though I have a dangling participle here somewhere, and I was trying to get to it. But I think that it's clear to me, oh yeah, I know what it was. And so the action that we would take today would be to set that public hearing. The action that appears before us, should the city not be willing then to move forward in making a plan modification would be to move that it's not consistent, in all of those ways. So I'm fine. I'm ready to move toward the public hearing. I will be voting for that today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, Councilmember Wolf, then Councilmember Lindstrom. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Carter, excellent questions. I'm glad that you brought that up. The closest we've come in my almost 15 years now was the city of Crystal wanting to redevelop the airport. Right. Which obviously didn't happen. But I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. Your three options that you talked about were what popped in my head. I'm not quite clear why the city is opposed to all three of those options, but I guess we'll find out at the public hearing. Yeah. It certainly has implications for our system, because if we do this here, everybody's going to want to do it on the edge of the MUSA, and it would have bad consequences for our system. So thank you for giving us all this information. I'm sorry, it's going to be really interesting, but I'm sorry we have to go there.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Lindstrom.
I had the pleasure of meeting with some of the city officials a while ago now, maybe 6 months ago. And I'm looking forward to hearing from them again in a week or two. If I recall correctly, and I may not, what we're talking about here is about 72 acres. And we have deductions that goes into the formula. If you have a lake, in your city, that doesn't count towards.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't develop on a lake, right? That would be real creative. But is there some, am I recalling correctly that there's some disagreement or quibbling on like what is actually developable within that area or not? Did I just make that up?
Mr. Horace.
It's possible I just made that up.
Sounds good.
Chair Lilligren and council members. I don't think that it's a disagreement about what is developable, but I'll let Eric maybe chime in if he feels differently on that. I think that the process and practices that we have outlined in the local planning handbook are very clear about what is eligible to be netted out. And so the 72 acres is the net developable area available for this development. And so we do have, where they have locally adopted ordinances that protect natural environments, then that is able to be deducted from the total area.
I see there's a slew
that
that's
has already
close to
been
this.
done in this case, and it's still remaining with those 72 point whatever acres. And so I don't think, Eric, is there anything else?
I have nothing to add there. I think you summed that up well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lindstrom?
I'm ready to make a motion for a public hearing unless there's other questions or comments.
Sure. Move the proposed action to set the public hearing for February 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. here.
Second.
Right. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. We look forward to hearing from the folks from North Oaks. Thank you so much for your work on this presentation. All in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you.
I was wondering where that went.
What's that? Oh, I know. I could almost just got the vibe, but I was like, I'm just mixing it up a little, keeping you on your toes. And committee members, I'll remind you, we need to clear the chambers at 5:45 to make way for the Equity Advisory Committee meeting so they can reset the media. Right, so our next item is item 2024-26. This will look kind of familiar to a lot of committee members, I think. This is a funding recommendation for the 2023 Local Housing Incentives Account Homeownership Program. And Ashley Johnson is here to present. Ms. Johnson, welcome.
Thank you, council member. Sorry, thank you, council member. So I am Ashley Johnson, the manager of the Local Housing Incentives Account, or LHIA. Today, we will be making our final recommendation for LHIA's 2023 funding round. I am here to propose, well, last month, the committee voted to allow staff to return and propose another homeownership recommendation with the remaining $75,000 approximately. We'd first like to thank the committee for its guidance and insight, and note that Lauren Olson from the city of Minneapolis is here in attendance today. If the committee has any questions. The city has also submitted a letter of support in the business items before you for the council's review, expressing its support. So before I hop into the recommendations, I will first outline what we're talking about today. I will give an overview of the funding recommendations so far, including the one today for the city of Minneapolis, Refresh Minneapolis. And then we will hop into the proposal itself. As a refresh, these are the applications and the proposals that came through for the 2023 LHIA homeownership round. In Hennepin and Ramsey County, we were to allocate $2.9 million. We have made the recommendation for 5 of the 6 of our proposals listed here. So proposals will span 5 cities: Golden Valley, Edina, the city of Minneapolis, Minnetonka, and the city of St. Paul. The program received 8 proposals, and here they're listed in the order of the points received of the applications. So as you can see highlighted in orange is Refresh Minneapolis's application. In this application is 3 homes proposed. And they'd like to receive the remaining $74,669 of LHIA funds. So this proposal would leave us with about $575,000 in unfunded requests. For LHIA this year, scoring was done by community development staff. I was excluded, of course, and an external partner, city in the region. So this would allow us to build 3 more homes. Previously, well, we have already approved last week 25 homes. So again, I'd like to thank the committee for shepherding these through. So this is a table of our funding recommendations, and I'll pause here. Recommending 6 projects for a total of 2.9. Well, we're actually just recommending Refresh Minneapolis right now, highlighted there. So I'll pause here for any questions, also for Lauren from the city of Minneapolis, who was here today.
Ooh, questions on the report so far? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, I just want to confirm, because in December when we discussed this, there was a shortage by the developer of 30,000, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Or am I getting this mixed up with something else, or?
Through the chair, I think I may need a little bit more context.
Okay, let me just rephrase the question. So the Refresh Minneapolis, the original total, was that 439,000?
Yes, that
Okay.
was the amount that Refresh Minneapolis applied for.
And that was for 4 homes?
Yes.
But now we're looking at 3 homes?
Yes.
Okay, and so that gets us, that resolves the shortage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe,
think
I'm looking at your face, and your face is saying there's more information that I need to receive, or maybe that the committee can receive, so we're more clear on why there is a change to the recommendation. So if I can
Gotcha.
get clarity on that.
Why there's a change to the amount that
Yes.
Refresh asked for?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, through the chair, so many things have happened.
Yes.
So at first, Refresh proposed 4 homes for $439. However, a lot changed between when Refresh sent in the application and when we then came back to double back to try to award the next highest project. And since then, she had received a award from the City of Minneapolis Homes project that changed the funding structure of her project. And with that, then the City of Minneapolis has agreed to support an additional 2 homes that Refresh will be applying for in the upcoming Minneapolis Homes round.
Okay.
So basically, the project just got a little bit more refined.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. Further questions at this point? Any further questions? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. All right. So this is Refresh Minneapolis's proposal. This is an image of 1600 Oliver in North Minneapolis, Willard Hay neighborhood. The development team is the City of Minneapolis, Refresh Minneapolis, and the City of Lakes Land Trust will be helping the applicant keep the properties affordable. So this will be a preservation project, or it is a preservation project. We're recommending 3 homes kept affordable at the AMI of 50%, and that is for all 3 homes. So Refresh Minneapolis is hoping to acquire the next 2 homes and renovate those as they have already secured this home pictured here, 1600 Oliver. And finally, I request that the Metropolitan Council award 1 homeownership local housing incentives account grant totaling $74,966, and also authorize its Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Further questions on that report? I wasn't here for the conversation at committee level, so I'm still kind of playing catch up here, but I really want to commend you, Ms. Johnson, and the committee members for looking at this in a new way, being a little more creative. This is kind of finishing out our 2023 Local Housing Incentive Account Home Ownership Program Award. So well done. Thanks. If there's no discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And we'll move on to, that's our business items, our non-consent business items. Next is an information item. It's the draft LCA fund distribution plan for 2024. And Sarah Berkey's here to present. Ms. Berkey, welcome.
Hello.
Ms. Gray as well, welcome.
You get 2 of us this evening. We'll
Yay,
introduce
double
ourselves.
tag team in here.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
so, hi, I'm Sarah Berkey. I'm the Senior Manager for Livable Communities and Housing Policy. I'm here with,
I'm Hannah Gary. I'm a planning analyst with the Livable Communities team.
yeah. So today, we're coming back to you about a month after you originally saw a preview of much of this information to present a draft of the fund distribution plan for the Livable Communities Act programs for 2024. As you just saw, we just finished up the 2023 program year just now, and we are not stopping. We're going right back into it. So the The Livable Communities Act in statute requires that the council prepare an annual plan each year for distribution of livable communities funds based on program criteria that the council establishes. They must be consistent with and promote the purposes of the original statute and our Metropolitan Development Guide, Thrive 2040. So today, we have an overview of funding availability for 2024. That's new information. We have a staff recommendation for funding allocations for each of the programs, and then we'll present an overview of the scoring framework that we've already been using and highlight some adjustments that we plan to make to it, which we believe are quite minor. They are shown in red line in the attachment. The first attachment is the red line version. Second attachment in your packet is the clean version of what the scoring criteria would look like if we present them as they are today in this proposal. It is a lot of red ink, but it really looks like a lot more than it really is. Much of it is wording adjustments, things we wanted to make sure are clearer, and a few small changes which we highlighted in our discussion last month as well. So we plan to bring this to you again on February 5th, but let us tell you a little bit about what's in the proposed plan so far this year.
And before we jump into the proposed plan, I'm going to go over a brief overview of the LCA programs. So the LCA programs include several grant programs with either 1 or 2 rounds each year, and each of the programs operates on separate timelines throughout the year. So these opportunities fall under 3 main accounts. The first account that we have is the Tax-Based Revitalization Account, or TBRA. TBRA always offers 2 rounds of grants each year for site investigation, seeding equitable economic development, or SEED, and contamination cleanup. The second account that we have is the Livable Communities Demonstration Account, or LCDA. Under the umbrella of LCDA, we have 4 programs. That's pre-development, policy development, LCDA, and TOD development. TOD is transit-oriented development. Both of the development accounts are offered annually, and then our pre-development and our policy development accounts are offered twice each year. And we also have, under this umbrella of LCDA, the Affordable Home Ownership Program, which is also offered annually. And the final account that we have is the Local Housing Incentives Account, or LHIA. This is currently offered through a separate annual opportunity. It's part of the consolidated RFP with Minnesota Housing. So the dates that we have here on the slide are tentative timelines for bringing recommendations for each program forward to you as a committee. These dates are approximate, they may change, but we, of course, will be in conversation with you all about the final dates. Once council approves the fund distribution plan, tentatively later in February, staff will publish all of the program materials and begin outreach and engagement to encourage applicants to apply, and we'll also start beginning our technical assistance.
All right. So each year we assess funding availability for LCA grants by looking at our base revenue and program reserves. The base revenues are calculated based on statutory language. Only the LCDA account actually grows. It's defined in percentage terms in the statute, whereas LHIA and TBRA baselines are fixed in dollars that were defined in 1995. So that's just something important to understand about the funding available here. It's worth a little less than it was at that time. So some reserves that we have are restricted to specific programs, whereas others are unrestricted within the overall LCA fund. So typically each year we have allocated a portion, although not the full majority of those reserves, to allow us to make a few more grants each year and to reallocate funds that are available for various reasons in reserves. This year we have $14.0 million in unrestricted reserves. The restricted reserves, we have a couple of million each in TBRA and in LCDA accounts. And then we have our base revenue, which is the only change there is that we have $14.3 million in the LCDA account this year. So for tax-based revitalization account this year, we anticipate increased or sustained demand for the program. And we will be offering at least one kind of grant in a new form in our proposal, the site investigation grant, which would be available for a larger one-time award that a community could draw down over a longer period of time. And partly to accommodate that, we have proposed a slight increase in funding for TBRA and allocating some reserves to allow for those awards to be available without making any fewer cleanup grants this year potentially. So we propose $5.5 million in contamination cleanup and site investigation, and $500,000 again this year for the SEED program, which is intended to facilitate development in areas that need a little extra attention and that meet equity criteria. For the LCDA account, this chart is getting fairly large as we have more and more sub-programs and different funding opportunities throughout the year under the overall umbrella of LCDA. But essentially, we recommend increases that are a slight increase for LCDA development and for TOD development this year over last year's funding levels. A slight increase for pre-development as well. We've had a strong demand for all of those programs. Something slightly new this year is reserving $200,000 for the policy development program, which had previously been just combined with the pre-development budget. We're starting to see more interest in that program and wanted to make sure that we allow for some grants to be made in that area. And then the homeownership program is in the LCDA column this year to more accurately reflect the fact that that program is being funded entirely through the LCA program reserves. So same funding as last year, but we're calling it LCDA for administrative purposes now. And each year we update the TOD map. This is an updated 2024 map, which is different than the one which you may see in your business item. That's last year's map. And so we'll be sure to get the updated map in for the final approval next month of the plan. For local housing incentives account, because we are operating with just the base funding allocation and some reserves that we can dedicate to the program, we are proposing a steady funding level for multifamily projects. This would be awarded through the consolidated RFP with Minnesota Housing and other partners in the region, $2.5 million. So municipalities by statute also must match the LHIA funding awards dollar for dollar. And so that's another aspect of the program to consider. I'm going relatively quickly because I know we have to end at 5:45, but feel free to slow me down if you have any questions. So this is just a summary slide, putting everything together that I just talked through. A proposal to allocate, what is the final number? I have it written down here somewhere. Anyway, to allocate all the funds to all the programs as we just discussed, a slight increase in LCA programs this year compared to last year, and maintaining a healthy unrestricted reserve balance of $9.5 million in our accounts along the way.
Now we're going to talk about the changes that we're proposing to scoring. One of the changes that we are proposing for 2024 is to combine the teams and process section in scoring. In 2021, the LCDA and TOD accounts were restructured so that the scoring focused on the what, the how, and the who. And the what assesses the outcomes, so more of the tangible pieces of the project. The how assesses the project development process, and the who was looking at the project team. In reviewing application answers and in looking at scores, we are proposing to combine these two sections for LCDA, TOD, pre-development, and policy development. They were scoring on very similar components of the application, and we saw that this was leading to redundancy in answers and was challenging for reviewers to differentiate scores in these two sections. So by combining these two, consolidating the review criteria, we are hoping to eliminate some of that redundancy and better clarify the scoring criteria both for our applicants and for our reviewers. So the written discussion, as you'll see in your business item, like Sarah mentioned, has both a red line version and a clean version of the proposed updates to the LCA scoring criteria. All of the updates are consistent with a broader framework that we originally adopted in 2021. So again, that's going back to the what, the how, and the who, although the how and who are combined going forward. Many of the changes that we made are focused on clarifying criteria based on feedback that we've received both from grant reviewers and from applicants, and on making plain language updates to ensure that our wording is clear to broader audiences. We are going to continue to evaluate the scoring framework to get feedback and to consider additional program changes. And all of this is part of our process for larger program changes in 2025. We have definitely heard that there's interest in seeing more suburban cities participate and be successful in awards. And we've also heard from the council that equity is key, and deep affordability is also very important. And we intend to include suburban communities in our program change process to make sure that that perspective is represented as we develop more of a stakeholder engagement plan there. And one method that we hope will better support suburban applicants is to move from a two-step scoring process to a single-step scoring process for LCDA and TOD. And in addition, we're looking at implementing the single-step scoring process for the home ownership application. Our intention is to have all of the applications be seen by both internal and external reviewers to streamline the scoring process and to bring all of our scoring process into closer alignment with those of other council grants and other public grant programs that we see. So we've heard concerns that there are LCDA and TOD applications that are eliminated before they are reviewed by external reviewers. And with the single-step review process, all of the applications would be reviewed by both internal staff and external reviewers. The criteria that applications are going to be scored on is not going to be changing, so the step 2 criteria are rolled into the single-step scoring process, and the priorities for selecting external reviewers will also remain the same. It's incredibly important to us as staff that we have external reviewers involved in the application review process. And during this last round of home ownership funding recommendations, there were some questions raised about the review process. The changes that we're proposing to both LCDA and TOD and eventually the home ownership program is a step that we're taking to further have a standardized review process that's consistent, that's transparent, and is more closely aligned with the review processes of other grant programs. We have had conversations with cities and applicant teams, and those conversations have revealed that our lengthy application review time is really challenging for a lot of applicant teams. The two-step scoring process is also incredibly resource intensive for staff. So again, we're hoping that moving to a single-step review process will reduce the amount of time that applicants are waiting for a decision, reduce the administrative burden on staff, and ensuring that all applications get the same review by internal and external reviewers.
Oops, sorry.
So I mentioned earlier that we are going to be combining the project process and the project team sections for a number of the programs. This is an example of how we are combining those two sections. So in 2023, we had a question about the need for the project. We assessed the city's efforts to address disparities in the city, as well as city's financial contribution and how reflective the team is of the project community. In 2024, we are proposing to combine those to have 2 points under the larger category: how well the project reflects community culture and needs, and the city's efforts to address disparities in the city. And Sarah is now going to take us through some of the larger program changes that we're looking at.
Yeah. So another update that we mentioned last month and incorporated into this draft was some updates to the homeownership program, which has now been offered for 2 years. This will be the 3rd year. One new update is partly because in recognition of the fact that this is really being funded through the LCDA account, we don't need to enforce the one-to-one match provision, but we do want to kind of keep the practice of encouraging communities to put some of their own skin in the game and to support projects in their own communities. And so rather than a match, we'll have a 50% cap, which is the first time we've had any kind of guidance around an award limit for this program. 50% cap on the total development gap so that a project would have to seek funding from their local community or another source to fill that gap. And that allows us to make, good use of our funds across the whole region is the intention. We also are implementing some guidance on how we will prioritize the number of recipients and the number of homes that are supported by the program in the event that we again have more demand for it than we're able to meet. And so some of the decisions that we talked through with you this year, we have documented more formally this year compared to the initial pilot phase of this program. And I think that's the most important thing to highlight. Hannah already talked about, some changes to the scoring and selection process and the desire for this program to really be better aligned with the other development grants we're making with LCDA and TOD, because there's a lot of, common dynamics of those programs anyway. And then with the scattered site pilot effort that I mentioned earlier, we put into these draft criteria the option for a $250,000 scattered site investigation award to a community or a applicant who could identify a target area and identify multiple sites over a period of time to do site investigation projects, with the intention that this would be more valuable to our applicants and allow them to be responsive to needs that emerge, on a regular basis in their community, to do a relatively small project in a more time-sensitive way. And
I will go through this quickly, since we are running short on time. So as we've mentioned, we are only making minor changes for 2024, since as a team, we are going into a larger program change process to look at bigger changes for 2025. The strategy that we're looking at for program changes for 2025 is a very engaged strategy, and it will be a very iterative process. So we will look at recommendations, check in with folks, make changes, check in with folks, make changes, check in, to make sure that a diversity of perspectives are being represented in the program changes that we plan to bring forward. So we will continue to have conversation with you throughout the year on the program changes that we are looking to recommend for 2025.
Yeah, and I'll add, we encourage you to help us find ways that these program changes that we propose for this program can support, the set of goals and the vision statement that we're already starting to develop for Imagine 2050, and really want to align this work with that work at the council. So where we are in the process right now, if all is well, we will plan to put this on the February 5th agenda. So it's not too late to ask questions today, to have a discussion. And then as soon as the plan is ultimately approved by this committee and by the council, we will start the 2024 year, and we'll post all of our materials and start recruiting applicants and providing technical assistance. But as we prepare for that, we would first like to invite you to ask any questions you have tonight.
Questions on the, thank you very much for your work on this and for the report. Questions on the report, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thanks for the presentation, Sarah and Hannah. I know a lot of work goes into making sure that we're meeting our policy goals and plans. We try different things to make sure that we're improving our processes and our outcomes. I'm quite nervous about the timeline. For changing, some of these changes could be significant in terms of the process steps. I'm not sure we have enough time to fully evaluate that. So I'd like to maybe talk about that some more. And, you know, take a look at the timeline. Is that enough time? In order to accomplish equity, it requires sometimes a lot of work, maybe some extra steps, and it can also mean more impact on staff resources and things like that. I also want to evaluate the parts of our process and the parts of our criteria that are the most objective, and those things that we may be adding in that could be potentially more subjective or subject to pressures that can make a difference in our equity outcomes. So I would encourage us to be very cautious in moving forward and making sure that when we are improving, we're actually improving what we intend to improve and not have unintended consequences. So that's why the timeline makes me nervous.
Thank you, Councilmember. Did you want to respond, Ms. Berkey?
Sure. Just a question of clarification, Chair, for Councilmember Chambliss. Just about, are you concerned about having enough time for the 2024 FDP or the larger program changes we were talking about for 2025?
The larger program changes.
I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Okay, but I thought the larger program changes were going to be in 2024, and so thank you for clarifying that.
Well, yeah, just for clarity, the timeline would be we're working on the larger program changes over the course of this calendar year in 2024, but this would be the plan for grants this year. And if we're ready to make big changes before we do this again next year, we would do them no sooner than the 2025 fund distribution plan.
Okay, but what about the approval timeline? Because sometimes we approve things in advance, and then, you know, I hear, oh, well, we approved it, but we're still working on it later, and then, you know, we have to have an opportunity to review, reset, whatever. So, and then just to be more specific about the objective and subjective parts, and that's related to either a one-step process or a two-step process, because I think at one time it was a one-step process. We moved to a two-step process for some very specific reasons, and I think we need to talk about that some more.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yeah, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I don't see some of these changes as minor. They're pretty big changes, and we just got to see them late last week when the stuff was finally posted, which means that even if cities are following things that we're doing, they're not getting the opportunity to know what these changes are until the last minute either. And I'm concerned about the lack of ability to interact with our partners, the cities and counties that do these projects, to make sure that everybody feels like they're heard and have a part in the process. That's why last year we asked to have 2 public meetings to talk about this stuff, but instead of talking about our actual programs, we talked about kind of general feelings about things. And personally, I don't see implementing Imagine 2050 priorities as the most important part of this program. I see doing what the legislature told us we're supposed to do with this in partnership with our city and county partners so that we have a broadly supported program. And I'm not seeing that in this. Even your minor changes, like things like for Livable Communities demonstration account, it's switching to having 30, you have to have 33 out of 55 points, including 12 of the available 23 equity points. It made a big increase in the number of equity points. The equity points are 40% of the overall point thing, and you need at least 60% to get funded. So you could get all the equity points and only a third of the other points and get funded. So you're all in on equity, but you've got to actual application, lost my thought, project. I think that's a bad balance of points, because the important thing should be the project is going to have a good impact on the community. The equity points kind of presume that everybody is discriminating and that we're somehow stopping that with this program and the way we do the points. But there are a lot of places that have been very actively being inclusive throughout their community, not concentrating poverty, and so they don't have a feeling that there's this big problem for them to solve, because their community is integrated and not feeling like there's a equity problem. But yet 40% of our points are on equity rather than the actual project. And I think we're kind of missing the forest for the trees there. I'm gonna not talk too long because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm not voting for this next week or whenever we, next meeting.
Chair.
Yes,
Chair
Ms.
Logan, I
Berkey.
was wondering if I could just respond or clarify some of the comments Councilmember Wolf just made about the equity points, and Hannah can speak to some of the details, but my reading of the proposal is that, you know, we had a minimum 12 equity points last year, and that is the same number of equity points this year. The scoring rubric is a little different because we moved around that project team category, and so we kind of changed some of the specifics of how those points are earned, but the overall number is the same. And the intention is for the outcomes to be similar, although it may look a little different in terms of the actual rubric, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, but we'd be really happy to talk through any of those really detailed level things, you know, anytime you would all like to. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, thanks, and thanks for bringing up those points, Councilmember Wolf. And we are on such a time constraint, and so I was just conferring with Director Barajas. We could bring this forward next cycle for discussion, further discussion, if the committee feels that we want that, correct?
Yeah, at our next CDC meeting.
At the next CDC meeting. Because I have similar, we do this every year, you know, and so we do have opportunities to kind of touch it, amend it, make it better. And I applaud your efforts of doing that even in this year where we're not considering these major changes. But it is kind of a time crunch to get these to our partners. And even, you know, we have Minneapolis Senior Government Relations representative here tonight, Ms. Olson. You know, she's brought concerns to me within the city of Minneapolis that has considerable resources, or at least considerably more than some of the communities. I'm sure Councilmember Wolf and I have talked about how some of the smaller communities that we're trying to encourage to participate, you know, this needs to be maybe more iterative. I look forward to this kind of falls into the participant and stakeholder involvement. If I look at the evaluation and outreach, looking ahead to 2025, and I look forward to that conversation. But even with the changes that are proposed here, I feel like it would be useful for the committee to see this again, to be able to spend more time with the changes, our partner communities, to maybe spend some time as well. So unless someone on the committee thinks that's a bad idea, that would be my intent. So Councilmember Bento, then Councilmember Carter.
I know this is hard to request, but to the extent that it's possible to have a significant amount of time in the next agenda, perhaps with fewer business items, so that we can really dig in, I would find it beneficial.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Councilmember Carter?
I'll second that. I would find that beneficial as well. But also the discussion regarding the equity points and how they are scored. And I'd really appreciate it if you would bring a description for us, not of what sounds like just generic equity scoring, but of the manner in which the equity considerations are tailored to the communities and address actual equity considerations within the communities. That would be helpful, I think, for me and perhaps for others as well.
Thank you, thanks, it's very helpful. I think that the scoring process reforms that you're recommending, I have a hunch that they will make this a better process. So I look forward to learning more about those as well. Director Braz, did you have some?
Yeah, may I ask, Mr. Chair, council members, if you wanted to spend, as we're planning ahead for that next committee discussion, if you wanted to spend more time on the scoring rubric itself and proposed changes, if funding was looking okay for you, if you wanted to revisit the funding conversation, really helps us shape how we plan for that meeting.
Input from the committee, yeah, Councilmember Carter.
I'm sorry, and thank you, I had forgotten to ask a question about funding availability and any criteria or policy that we have around funds that should be held over or in reserve versus funds that should be made available. Any ways in which the council has discussed that in the past or set criteria would be helpful.
Do you have a quick answer for that? Okay, please.
Mr. Chair, council members, we don't have a target reserve balance for this particular program, especially on the grant programs, because we try to award them every year in full. But of course, we receive sometimes turnbacks of projects that don't fall through, and of course, interest earnings on the funds that we're holding. We do like to retain some funds in that unrestricted reserve to meet future policy priorities that you might have, as well as to help cash flow in the interim as projects are coming with project requests over time. So it just gives us a little bit of cushion to work with there.
Thank you.
So for me, okay, Councilmember Vento and then Councilmember Chambliss.
One bit of information that I would find helpful, I don't know if anyone else would, and if no one else would, don't bother with it, but I'd be interested in more of a history on these grants over, say, a 10 or a 15-year period as to who's received them for how much, and if we've got any kind of an assessment or look back as to the investment and whether we've, it's turned out to be a good one. So if that kind of record is available without somebody having to sit and page through stuff, that would be great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lilligren, Chair
Yes, ma'am.
Lilligren, Councilmember Vento, can you clarify what you mean by the impact of the investment?
Well, was the project finished? Is it still up and running? It's, are they at capacity? Has the value of the property held, sort of, anything that we might have that's measurable that shows the impact some impact of some kind that the funding supported.
Okay, thank you.
Sort of an evaluation vein. Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I agree. I think that evaluation piece is important. And just to kind of see, which cities have applied, which were successful, and then how many projects they had, that kind of stuff would be important. The dollars, I'm not so concerned about. The only thing that kind of piqued my interest was the LHIA base revenue not increasing, and wondering, do we have some policy or advocacy work to do to get that base changed, or to let our partners in legislature know about the impacts of inflation and are not being able to keep up with helping out with funding. So that was one thing. The other thing for me is, so that's the only thing about the dollars. It's the process, and the process of evaluation, as well as just looking at what is it that we're trying to achieve, and how are we trying to achieve that with our criteria. So, taking a broad look at that, so that we're all clear, we're all on the same page as to what our goals are. I mean, I know it seems obvious that we're trying to, clean up sites. It's obvious that we're trying to have more livable communities and those kinds of things. But breaking that down to the impacts and the effects of these proposed changes to get us there. That's really important. And how do we measure that our process is going to be improved? How do we measure if there are going to be barriers along the way that might prevent us from reaching our goals? What have we learned in moving from a one-step to a two-step process in terms of its effectiveness? Not how hard is it, but how effective is it? And what challenges might we have in a two-step process that has more broad impact on the results? Because if you bring more people in, you're going to have potentially a broader impact. And you may be taking out some of the objective pieces of the evaluation process when you do that. So I just want to make sure that we're not going in that direction.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm going to recognize Councilmember Wolf, and then hopefully we can bring this to a close. Councilmember Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to have a little funding discussion about the scattered, TBRA scattered site pilot. We had the seed pilot, which it just wouldn't die. Even though it wasn't very effective, it just kept coming back. And now we're going to start another pilot, and if we're going to do something that's never going to go away, I want to understand that first.
And we'll have opportunity for that at the next CDC community development committee meeting. Councilmember Bento, final word.
Just to be clear, I would like the funding information historically.
Great, yep,
Okay.
I think that's registered. And a question I would ask, and so if we're going to have a little more time in committee, I would just love to hear your expert interpretation or expectation of what some of the new housing funding, how that may impact our programs going forward. That's 2025 and forward, but I would love to hear from you all who do a lot of work and thinking around this, please. Cool. This Tuesday meeting time kind of constrains our ability to do business, but I appreciate everyone's cooperation, and we look forward to the conversation at the next CDC meeting. And seeing no further business before this committee, we're adjourned.